Death attracts the living. Always found that funny. The thing so many fear the most, splashed across front pages like tabloid fodder, made into bingeable TV shows to be consumed with a bowl of popcorn, the subject of videos made by internet personalities while they apply a full face of glam. Who isn't fascinated by the end? And what kid, given the chance, hasn't grabbed the nearest stick to poke at something, some unfortunate animal laying lifeless at the roadside? It's a fairly common impulse, I think, driven by innocent curiosity. But in my neck of the woods, where the skunk ape stinks up the Everglades and the Florida man roams free, some of us know better. That it's sometimes wiser to walk on by and let the dead rest. You never know when you're going to run across something like empty shell. Maybe I think all kids are body pokers because I was one. Back when I was young, before the age of electronics, with mothers who would toss their children outside and tell them not to come home until supper, I spent a lot of time walking the scrubland trails near my house with my friends. It wasn't uncommon to come across the body of some small critter, often a bird or a lizard. Stomach expanded with heat and trapped gases, its eyeballs already eaten by red ants. The less than fresh ones would sometimes burst after a few lazy jabs, releasing a miasma of stink and sludge. Gross, but in an entertaining way that pre-adolescent boys appreciate more than most. There was only one kind of body we never messed with. Tortoise shells. If you saw one lying around just off the path, we'd push and tease each other to go give it a nudge, all while giving it a wide berth and passing with hurried steps. Names were called: Pansy, Baby, Little Bitch, but none were strong enough to override the stories we'd been raised on. Sure, it was dumb kiddie stuff, but deeply ingrained, like suddenly thinking Bloody Mary would actually be plausible while standing before a mirror in a dark bathroom. The same giddy fear that keeps people from invoking Mary kept us from touching the shells. Any could have been home to the terrible child-eating beast that was said to inhabit South Florida. Wayne thought we were dumb. He was a transplant from New York, not the city, but he still liked to think that he was some kind of De Niro. It could be hard to take him seriously. Scrawny ginger from upstate, trying to put on a Brooklyn edge, but we liked him all the same. He was funny. He'd fallen in with our group after marching up to us in the street, declaring his name and asking what the hell there was to do around here. It was the height of summer, perfect for long days spent showing our new friend the lay of the land. We took him around the pond, rode our bikes through the swales and ditches, and showed him the shanty fort that we built in the woods out of palm fronds and tree branches. He was there, attempting to hide from the stifling heat, that we introduced him to Empty Shell. He'd been boasting about the haunted house he lived in New York, where stuff was old and had history, as he liked to say with a smarter-than-you smirk. Florida didn't have that kind of thing. Ronnie had challenged him. Oh yeah? We got Empty Shell. Wayne scoffed, unimpressed, even as we told him about the monster. That was a made-up baby story, he said, not like ghosts. Ghosts were real and cool, and he'd lived with one. And we threw sticks at him until he shut up. The only thing we accomplished that day was lighting a fire under Wayne's butt to prove us all wrong. Gopher tortoises weren't that unusual in our area, but we didn't find them dead very often. Dad said that it was because they were burrowers, and when their time was up, they'd go into their hole one last time, and simply never come up again. Still, don't know how true it was, but as a kid, it made sense. Like I said, me and the others avoided the rare few we came across. Wayne took to touching all of them. "No, no," he'd taunt us, tap, tap, tapping the tortoise shell. "Is it empty shell? Is it gonna get me?" Each time, we'd roll our eyes and call him a shithead, but we kept our distance. Our nervousness emboldened Wayne, and he started to actively call out to Empty Shell, inviting it to lay on our path so we could use it for a drum solo. Of course, none of us really believed in the creature, but we still side-eyed the long, gold grass that grew around the path. Eventually, his interest waned and turned to other things, and we finally got a little peace from the legend of the Empty Shell. I'd say we'd almost put it behind us completely, especially since Sandy Core had started sunbathing in her front lawn, and all the ruffled feathers smoothed over again. Until Wayne invited me to go out to the shanty fort to look at some magazines he'd found in his older brother's room. Since the others were busy, the two of us hopped on our bikes and headed for the trail alone. He took the lead, his bounty wrapped protectively in a towel against his chest. We were almost to the fort when he skidded to a halt, sending me into a swerve to avoid him. I demanded to know what his problem was. "Look," he said. A tortoise shell, larger than what we had usually found, was sitting in the dirt in front of us. I told him to just go around it, but Wayne was climbing off his bike. "Think it's dead?" he asked. I didn't really want to find out, and said as much. It wasn't that I was scared. I just wanted to look at the magazines. He ignored me, then walked toward it, goofy grin on his face. "Aw, is Whittle Billy afraid?" he cooed at me. "Worried Empty Shell's gonna eat you?" I sighed, bored of the game already, and positioned myself to ride around him. He nudged the edge of the shell with his foot, lightly at first, and when nothing stirred from inside, harder, the shell rocked from the kick. "Leave it alone," I told him. "It's just a dead turtle." "Tortoise," he corrected me. While he stared at me, waiting for me to retort, the shell twitched behind him. "Wayne?" I whispered. He said something. Maybe that I wasn't going to be able to scare him, or maybe just a mocking what? I don't know. All my attention had shifted to that tortoise shell and the thing rising out of it. The pointed tip of a bleached beak emerged from the head, and it slithered outward and up and up and up. A large bird skull atop a serpentine, skeletal neck like a fleshless sandhill crane. It hoisted its shell body on 4 bird-like legs, scaly, black, long, and ending in 3 talons. Wayne turned at the same time I started to scream. He threw his bundle of magazines at Empty Shell's white skull and scrambled backwards, his colorless expression twisted in horror. The creature crouched low to the ground and scuttled quickly after him, completely silent, except for the light scratch of its feet over earth. Wayne opened his mouth, perhaps to yell something to me, but all that came out was a high-pitched, terrified wail. The end of Empty Shell's beak tore through the front of his thigh. I started towards him, I pulled back, then hung in place, torn between wanting to help my friend and horror at the thing attacking him. I shouted his name. Wayne reached for me as he fell forward, and his scream was muffled by the ground. Empty Shell ripped its beak through his leg, lowered itself, and pounced upon Wayne's back, its talons clawing through his thin t-shirt and sinking into his skin. Red beads of blood turned into rivers as he struggled beneath the monster's weight. I cried out. My head swung around in search of something to knock it off, but before I could find anything, Empty Shell reared back and it sank its beak into Wayne's shoulder. When it came up again, a strip of flesh hung from the end. Wayne howled and thrashed, which only made Empty Shell bear down all the more, raking and stabbing viciously. I tried to get my legs to move to run toward my friend, but they had become wooden, unresponsive. I yelled his name again, and this time the thing's black sockets fixed on me, and it opened its stained beak to release a harsh, low hiss. Its neck coiled, and it pierced the center of Wayne's back, his spine. He gurgled and spasmed, and when his eyes met mine, I backed away. Slowly at first, and then I was running. A sharp, triumphant call, the shriek of a predator bird, chased me down the path. I looked back, just once. Just long enough to see Empty Shell dragging Wayne into the long grasses. Just long enough to see the pleading, desperate light burning in Wayne's eyes disappear. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching tonight's video. Or watching tonight, or listening to tonight's podcast, because it's also a podcast on Spotify, or on Apple, or on Google, or anywhere else you can listen to the podcast. If you've all been curious about what I look like, and not just what I sound like, then you might be getting your chance to be able to see that. On Indiegogo right now, there is a project called Giggles Indie Horror Movie. The Giggles Indie Horror Movie is something that's spearheaded by Madame Macabre, and I'm sure you're all aware of her. It's a film that I've been asked to play one of the major leads in, and I'm super excited about it, so I hope that all of you are excited about it as well. You can check out the trailer there on the Indiegogo page, as well as a lot of the different effects and makeup that they're working on for this clown-themed horror film. And lastly, as always, I want to remind you guys, if you ever want to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. And I really appreciate any time you guys can support the show, because honestly, I love you guys. You're all awesome. So, a very special thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Haha Saha, Ken Lenda Higuchi, Mazakine, Champinski, The Red Oak Shield Virus, G. Weevil 3, Diana Kraus, Stephen Van Huss, Chance Burnett, Tristan Pelton, Nico Cowell, The Ginger Bros, Last Blade Song, Caleb Dougal, Sky Harbor, The Homeless Bird 93, Bobby Karen, Liam Newman, Aaron Stormcrow, Barbara Maceo, Thomas Burgett, S-Man, Kiri the Sloth, Bad Honey, Someone You Love, Said the King 56, Shadow Morningstar, Mad Marstomp, Mr. Thud, Patrick Schoolmeister, Z. Kearley, Wolfie Nums, Rafael Rodriguez, WR Axis, Prozac and Pancakes, Mike Bullock, Acid System, Lauren, Brian Arse, and Rumblefox. And also a huge thank you to everybody who's down there in the description down below. You guys, as always, are the real MVPs, and I appreciate you more than I can possibly say. So thank you guys, thank you all for listening, and sweet dreams.